Okay, it looks like we're streaming.
Double check on my phone here to make sure that I can see it.
Oh, okay. Um, so I tried to put an announcement out about this earlier, but I not I don't couldn't really get an appropriate link off of YouTube. So I don't know if everybody can find this, but hey everybody, it's Jeff Melton from the Bitter Pill, live here for a change with Magnus Panvidya
Yeah.
from the Boogaloo Boys. There's Magnus.
Yeah, I
And
don't I don't see myself on your live stream. I'm not sure if I can hear myself. I guess I can check really quick if I can. Let's see real quick. Oh, there we go. Okay, so it does switch back and forth depending. Okay, cool. So it is working. We're good.
Okay, so here we are. Okay, so like I said a moment ago, I'm here live with Magnus Panvidya from the Boogaloo Boys. Um, well, I guess just to start, Magnus, tell us like who you are and who the Boogaloo Boys are and uh, what you're about, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I'm just your average hippie nerdy anarchist. A lot more, not nearly as terrifying as they try to paint me. Been around Michigan for a while, been an activist pretty much my whole life for a variety of causes, mostly environmental activism. And just a year ago, this idea of like the Boogaloo movement, not just the meme, because the meme's been around forever, but the Boogaloo movement was coming around of just a bunch of very anti-authoritarian, anti-establishment, not left or right people coming together and forming these kind of independent groups, sort of like militias, but kind of different, and getting together to kind of prepare for what we saw, what we thought was coming of some kind of mass either collapse or like some form of war or some form of government lockdown against the people. We started to get together and organize through that. And then the lockdowns hit and the George Floyd events hit. And we already had these groups build up. We were already in contact with each other. And we made the agreement almost across the board independently, all of us just to start going out to these events where we supported them and supporting these events. And it's kind of blown up from there.
Okay, so what sort of events, protests, or whatever did you go out to?
Oh, we've gone to BLM events. We've gone to like more local kind of issue events if we were invited. We've gone to lockdown events, kind of like the pretty much everything that's been going on. If we have an opinion on it, if we have a message we want to get out, and particularly in a lot of cases, if we were invited, we'll go to them. Like us in particular, we've gone to a couple Stop the Steal events because we were invited by BLM because there had been violence in Lansing between BLM protesters and Trump supporters, and the BLM people invited us to go down there with them to kind of keep the peace.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And when you say neither left nor right, what do you mean by that?
It's just because like it doesn't really matter. It has nothing really to do with what we're talking about because we're not interested in partisan politics. We think both sides are wrong. The goals we're kind of trying to accomplish, we feel, are very universal and they don't really apply left or right. And we're not running around like
let me just,
flying.
what
was that?
by left or right, did you mean Democrat or Republican, or
Yeah, but also okay, like socialist or capitalist or like any like that's not exactly what we're focusing on. It's not what we're pushing for. We're not here to have arguments over free or publicly funded healthcare. Other people can have those arguments. We're focused on real issues that are extremely bad for everyone involved and almost everyone agree are awful, but nobody's really stepping up to solve them. Yeah. Stuff like the drug war, stuff like both of our parties being full of a bunch of criminals. Very anti-war stuff. Very simple objectives and things that we're going for.
Well, but would you say? I mean, we have a sort of form of capitalism, like klepto capitalism, where as I guess Marx or Lenin or one of those guys put it. The state is the executive committee of the bourgeoisie, so it's like hand in glove, big corporations and government. So when you say you're not like necessarily left or socialist or what have you, you do still mean you're against at least this form of capitalism. Right?
Yeah, this weird corporatist state we live in. It's neither socialism or capitalism. It's this weird, like, oligarchy fusion technocracy. Like you can't even really label it because it's so unprecedented, and the powers the tools they use to maintain control of things never existed. You can't really put a label on it, but everyone's getting screwed and nobody's happy. The hardcore capitalists are just as mad as the Marxists are. Nobody feels like this system and this government represents anyone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially those of us who are small business people or trying to be. So, like for example, I am a freelance copy editor. Was a psychologist, but part of this capitalist system is that adjunct professors get paid like McDonald's workers, so I had to give that up. But anyway, trying to start a copy editing business, and it's tough going.
Yeah, there's no business venture than like a small biz person with no contacts in this country. The whole system is designed to screw you. It's designed to make you not get ahead. If you look like all of the big brands and all of the big chain stores that like are all across the country, there really hasn't been a new one in forever. Like I vehemently remember when I was very young, like it being crazy that we had a Subway in our town because like Subway had not come there. It wasn't this nationwide chain. It was this new thing.
Yeah.
Now in 2021, name a extremely popular corporation that was created in the last 5 years that blew up across the country. We're talking about these Walmarts, these McDonald's, these old money places that they're not going out of business, they're not changing, and they dominate everything. You don't see the upstart rising up to overthrow, the king and become the next new big thing. It's been these same people ever since pretty much the Facebook generation. Once that select group of Google and Apple and everybody blew up, there's been no competition to rise up against them forever, and if someone does, the whole system conspires to destroy them.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, as you no doubt are reminded every single day, there is a lot of people out there who, have a negative impression of you guys. I just wanted to go through a few of the things I've come across and get your reaction to them. Let's see.
I'm all about it.
All right.
Let's open my water bottle and splash myself in my eye. Excuse me.
Okay, can you see that on your end there?
I cannot see anything but your smiling face. Right now,
okay. Okay. I guess the live stream hasn't switched over yet. So it says Dorr did not. This is from David North from the World Socialist website. Some of your favorite people, I'm sure. Says Dorr did not challenge the neo-Nazi politics of his guest. He expressed delight to discover areas of agreement with the Boogaloo Boys. Dorr then vehemently defended the fascist against socialist Jerry White.
Like what? I cannot articulate what about anything that I said. Sorry, this one phone real quick. I can't even try to wrap my mind around how anything I said is fascist politics. It's super surreal to me, and so I've yet to have anyone make the argument to me of like, oh, why is anything I said come across as fascist? I'm an anarchist, which is pretty much the furthest thing you can go away from being a fascist.
Yeah. Every
single one of my politics are all anti-authoritarian. They're all very simple. You can't really construe them to be one way or the other. And I didn't give my economic position on anything. I didn't give any moral positions because I don't care about any of that stuff. That's not what I'm focused on.
Yeah.
So it's so weird. Like, where are you getting that? Are you getting it just because you've decided that my group is on the wrong side of what? Who are you supporting? That's the weird thing. Like, if I'm opposing all of this and that makes me a fascist, then what is defending these banks and defending all of these multinational corporations and the politicians that are blowing up kids all across the world. Like, what does that make you? So it's just surreal. I don't get it.
Yeah.
I can't think of their worldview or how they arrive to the answers they do.
Well, clearly not by watching your interview on Jimmy Dore, which is what they were supposedly reacting to.
Yeah, and there's been tons of like gotchas for that. Like, people try to get me on my name of like, oh, he has a Latin name. Like, my name isn't Latin. It's Greek and Sanskrit. Like,
is that your legal name or
no?
Okay.
I mean, I was trying not to, be doxxed again, but somebody just went back and pulled up my old docs, so my legal name's already everywhere all over the internet anyways. But I like this, and I'm sticking with it, and I've gone by this on whether it be video games or usernames for my entire life, so it's taking and ride.
Yeah. Well, you're entitled to be called what you want to be called.
Right, which is really, really funny of like a lot of people that run around, holding dear the concept of not dead naming people, running around and be like, this is his actual name. Don't call him Magnus. His real name is Zach. And it's like, okay, that's great coming from you. I have all the grounds in the world to be very offended by that, and I'm going to just let you continue to do that and make yourself look like an idiot.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, we don't have time to go through all of these, but I'll just give you one more example. Jim Dies from the Status Quo podcast. They do some great reporting. They reported a lot on the poisoning of the water in Flint, which I'm sure you know all about there. But
personally involved with a lot of the action against it. yeah,
definitely. But as far as her reporting, quote unquote, on you guys, here's what she had to say. This new, quote, trend of supposed leftist voices saying we should join forces with Trump supporters and Boogaloo Boys and their ilk, the very voices that are loudly against AOC and progressive members of Congress, should be widely condemned. Well, guess what, Jim? I don't like AOC either.
There's not a single politician that passes the sniff test for me whatsoever. Yeah. That's in right now. I think they're all crooks. I think they're all liars. I think they're all showboating actors that are never going to accomplish anything. And these people just buy into it because, like, AOC said nothing but words. Yeah. She hasn't passed anything yet. She hasn't pushed anything yet. She just sat on Twitter and screamed and given speeches. Yeah. That doesn't mean anything. Like, and then when it came down to the line where she's like, okay, I'm a progressive. I'm going to put my name down on something. I'm going to vote. I'm going to force the vote. She cowered off of that. Yeah. So it's like, stop taking these people for their words. Like, none of them have followed through whatsoever. Trump didn't make America great again. Obama didn't bring change. Bush didn't build back America. Like, this is all lies. Yeah. It's just fluff words to get you, placated and worshiping their little cult they have going on over there. Yeah. Yeah. And you make a great point. It's before she had been in there for a while and got big and famous, AOC actually expressed support for forcing a vote on Medicare for all. But when an actual movement, initiated by Jimmy Dore but supported by a pretty broad spectrum of supporters of Medicare for all, we're pushing for the squad and so forth to force the vote. They're like, nah, we're going to vote for Pelosi. Just like we did last time. Exactly. Like my entire life, Ron Paul is still the only politician that actually stuck to his guns. And when he lost the primary for the Republican candidate, he was told that he needs to endorse other people. And he's like, no, I hate the Republicans. You're all a bunch of warmongers and evil people. Go screw yourself. And he didn't endorse anybody. He didn't advocate for anybody. Didn't show up at anyone's primaries. That's what I expect of you. Like, if you're a progressive and you think Nancy Pelosi is the devil, then you better not vote for her. And I don't care what's on the line. I don't care what they promise you. I don't care if someone comes by behind back closed doors. It's like, oh, we'll pass a $15 minimum wage if you confirm Pelosi. Tell them to go screw themselves, and then I'll have respect for you. Yeah. Even if you advocate for politics that I think are horrible and I will never agree with, I'll at least have respect for you. Yeah. And none of these politicians have shown a spine on that whatsoever. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, none of them. Not Bernie Sanders. None of them.
All spineless, and all
Yeah,
cowards. Every
yeah,
single one of them.
yeah.
I would have respect for them even if they put their neck on the line for something I disagreed with completely. As long as they showed some backbone for literally anything, I'd be
Yeah,
like, okay, I'll take an honorable opponent over a deceitful ally any day of the week.
yeah, for sure. Um, I saw you mention on Convo Couch that you did, to some extent, support Tulsi Gabbard, though.
Yeah,
Um,
it was that same kind of thing of like in the beginning, it was the same thing with Bernie. I'm like, wow, you're making a lot of people mad, and you're saying a lot of things I do like to hear.
yeah.
Well, let me see you prove it.
Hmm.
And just same with Bernie, she
Tulsi.
immediately backed out and endorsed people that she's even now calling domestic terrorists and everything. Now that there's no political consequences for it,
Yeah,
and it's like, you lose me. You lose me. I need to see a spine.
yeah,
You I would rather you have no political capital whatsoever for your first 1 or 2 terms or whatever it is, and everyone in Washington D.C. hates you, and have a groundswell of people that actually believe you're telling everyone to go screw themselves, than this weird fake thing where you pretend to be opposed to the establishment, but behind closed doors, and whenever it comes to a vote, you're perfectly in lockstep with them.
yeah. Well, I mean, at least she didn't do that. She was like the only person, and like you, I was really, you know, like completely turned off by her caving and endorsing Biden in the end. But you know,
And that which is fine. Now I have less expectations for her, and she can say good things. And I'm
yeah,
like, you're saying good things, and I
yeah,
don't have that action expectation of her. So I can be like,
yeah,
okay, cool, to call Tulsi, to where
yeah,
Bernie's still in the government, and Bernie's still, flailing his arms randomly and not fucking doing anything.
yeah,
Voting,
pretty much.
voting to, voting to confirm a Raytheon executive to the Department of Defense. He voted for that. He put his
Yes,
name at yes on that stamp. So like, yeah, Bernie, I see what you're doing. You're not some big people's hero. I'm sorry. I hate to break
yeah,
anyone's heart, but there's not a single person in DC that's your friend right now.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I voted for him in 2016 because it was like between him and Hillary. Yeah, sure, I'll vote for the lesser evil there.
Yeah,
But
and I have respect for him then, and I have
yeah,
respect for him literally up until the moment that he turned around and endorsed it.
yeah.
And
Well,
I
I
was
was
like,
on to him. I'm not sure how old you are, but probably when you were a little kid, I was on to him because, like, he supported sanctions against Iraq and, backed the Yugoslavia war, tried to dump some nuclear waste on poor brown people in Texas, and
yeah, he
you
does,
know,
he does have a way spottier record than people actually give him credit for. He has
yeah,
some dirty things in his history. He's voted for some iffy stuff, so it's like, because he like that, a lot of people claim like Bernie never voted for a war, and I'm like, there's a lot of Balkan wars that he approved. There's a
yes,
lot of Balkan wars under Clinton that he gave the thumbs up to. Like, it's just because it's old don't mean it's not true.
yeah, yeah. And one thing that I've noticed, even though all of these politicians have disappointed us, the ones who've disappointed us the least, like Bernie and especially like Tulsi, to the extent that they buck the establishment at all, whether it's Tulsi speaking out for Julian Assange, which Bernie's never done, or opposing wars or what have you. If you do that kind of stuff, you're going to have a target on your back from the corporate media, and get called a Russian asset and Assad toady and this and
Yeah,
that.
which is so surreal because you want
Yeah,
to talk about like an Assad toady. Why did both parties almost unanimously vote to give $200 million to Syria in the defense bill?
hmm.
That was you guys. That was almost every single Democrat and
Hmm.
almost every single Republican. I only think 11 people said no. So like you want to talk about an Assad toady? Y'all just gave him $200 million, and you've been trying to go to war with him pretty much since I've graduated high school. You've been trying to bomb Syria. And you
Yeah.
just gave that country $200 million for security money. What?
Hmm.
you know?
Oh, I didn't know about that one.
Yeah, if you look in the
But
omnibus, they have $200,000 for like police equipment and batons and stun guns and flak jackets for police in Syria,
hmm.
which is like, aren't we trying to bomb their country? And wouldn't the police be considered like part of the military in a civil conflict? So aren't you essentially funding the government military that you're trying to go to war with? Why? It's
yeah. Well, and
I
another
don't think
thing
there's
is,
an easy answer for that question.
yeah, and then the other baffling thing is that they're claiming to oppose ISIS and Al Qaeda and associated forces, and they attacked them some and so forth. But then they're at least indirectly funneling weapons to them, through
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia.
There was all those
Um,
crazy stories that everybody forgot about of like these ISIS fighters shamelessly uploading to Facebook and like Twitter and stuff, just coming across like a parachute with a box of guns and shit that fell out of some airplane somewhere. There's all these videos, so it's like I'm not getting too conspiratorial if we were funding both sides or whatever, but there's definitely a lot of weird things going on over there, and it did seem to kind of be like this never-ending war. And then the best part of it is you notice how it just disappeared. Like
yeah,
the whole 4 years of Trump, suddenly the Islamic terrorist attack stopped in America, and people stopped talking about all these insurgent groups and everything, and ISIS kind of disappeared. But now that Biden's back in, suddenly, oh no, ISIS activity has ticked up, and there's extremists in Syria, and we need to send troops to protect the oil fields.
yeah.
It's like what is going on over there? It seems a little suspicious. Just saying.
Yeah. Um, well, with all these attacks on you guys, on you in particular, since you've been the person most publicized, on folks like Tulsi Gabbard, to the extent that she's establishment, there seems to be this kind of pattern here of like, first of all, just saying things about people that have no basis in reality, um, and also just like stereotyping groups of people. And I see this. I'm a social psychologist, so I study this sort of thing. But I see this tendency to stereotype groups of people being really just as prevalent on the left as it is on the right. It's just different targets. So,
and the media for both sides funnels into that, amplifies that.
Yeah. Yeah. So on the right, it's like, okay, Muslims are bad. They're all terrorists or whatever. And then on the left, it's like, well,
every Trump supporter is a Nazi.
Every Trump supporter is a Nazi.
Target,
Or everybody who's not just like us is a Trump supporter or fascist or whatnot.
You see them doing that to the Wall Street's best people now. Like I shared that video where these articles are starting to come out of like Wall Street bets is influenced by Russia, or Wall Street bets. Wall Street bets, is a bunch of white supremacist Reddit bros, and it's like, no, like I see what you're trying to do here. You're trying to hijack this weapon that exists in our culture. You're trying to direct it towards anyone you want gone. And
Yeah.
people are getting wise to it. People are increasingly being able to look with their own eyes and assume they're being lied to and go find the information on themselves. And if somebody is like some piece of shit, right, white supremacist dude, they'll look into it and they'll figure out. And if they find something different than the media is telling them, that's another chink in the credibility. And that's why, a lot of people see the left wing going after me really hard, but the right wing, Alex Jones' own fans are tearing into him for that interview, because anyone who kind of exposed this grift, these people that their entire careers in journalism and media and live streaming and everything is just keeping people in their bubble and attacking everyone outside of it, and if anyone steps out of line, going after them and being really antagonistic and always calling people sellouts or traitors or there's this group of people that their whole livelihoods and their whole identity is based on attacking and destroying the other and getting everyone else convinced that everyone outside of that group is the other and that they need to go. And the more people like me and the more people like Jimmy and the more people step up and kind of break that idea, the harder and louder these people thrash, because they know that it's their entire worldview and identity, and sometimes their paycheck is based off of keeping people angry at each other and killing each other and doxing each other and exposing each other, and they're going to continue to get more and more upset the more their hustle is shown to the people.
Yeah. So, shifting gears a little bit, what do you uh, what do you see as the ultimate objective? Like, so let's say we get rid of big bad government and big bad corporations. Like, you know, what's your ideal society like?
I mean, like, there's my personal thing, and then there's kind of like what the movement in general kind of wants. So,
Uh,
I mean, which one would you rather prefer me say?
Both.
Well, yeah, the movement in general, like I said, just really simple objectives, and these things are, no matter what, we can never give up on them. No matter what we change, we're always going to have to fight people that are going to want to put us in wars. We're always going to have to band together to face, corporations and demagogues and warmongers that rise up in our society. But we're just right now where things are so bad that we're trying to get everybody together to be like, hey, can we stop, screaming at each other over how much money we put into, education or whatever, and table that conversation until we stop blowing up brown kids in the Middle East? Can we do that? Can someone who's Medicare for all and someone who's private, health insurance people stop screaming about that for 2 seconds, to hold hands, to march together, to say no more wars, to say no more drug war, to close, detention camps? Can we just do that? So in like the perfect world, it is just very like a step towards libertarian society is what people want. They want the police state gone. They want the surveillance state gone. They want the war on drugs over. They want the mass censorship and the monopolies gone. And that would be acceptable for a lot of, and it was more personal, utopias and everything. Which me, I'm an anarchist. So my
Right.
personal utopia would be that every single thing has to be voluntary. If I choose not to participate in a system, I should be able to leave at any moment and take everything that belongs to me out of that system, and nobody can do anything about it.
Uh,
And inside that system, inside volunteerism, you can have a bunch of people come together and be like, hey, we want to be communists, and nobody's going to own anything, and we all just collectively own this, and we're going to hang out and do this. And as long as everyone consents to that, sure, I have zero complaints. And at the
okay.
same time, if people want to run a capitalist system or a mutualist system, or they want to elect some guy as King Spaghetti and have everyone worship him. It doesn't matter. As long as everyone is consensually agreeing to it, every adult consensually agrees to what's happening, and as long as they can opt out at any moment, that's fine for me. And that's kind of like what I want to push forward, is a voluntary society.
Okay. But I mean, isn't it kind of inherent to capitalism, though, that there is a lack of consent because like some people own a lot more means of production than others, and so because of that, they, you know, like money is power. They kind of call the shots, and that's you know what we're living in now is just kind of an extreme case of that.
I mean, but also right now you're seeing the perfect example of guerrilla capitalism, where a bunch of Reddit idiots with $10 can single-handedly
Yeah.
destroy a multi-trillion-dollar hedge fund through just uniting together in people. And I
Yeah.
think both those options are possible. I just think that in the same way, I don't believe it is moral or acceptable to go to somebody and say, "Hey, that's yours. We all deserve it." And who makes that decision? Who's the "we" deserves it? What authority do they stand to tell other people what is and is not enough, what they should and should not own, what they should be, who they should do it with? And that
Mhm.
applies to both sides. Like, that's why I am a voluntarist, because I see no reason why people that want to go out in the woods and buy a farm have to pay property taxes, have to follow their laws. They just want to go out in the woods. They just want to
Yeah.
do it. They just want to dance around the maypole and smoke weed and mind their own business. You have no right to tell them they can and can't do that. So it goes both directions.
Yeah.
That's why I'm kind of like this radical libertarian centrist, I guess. I'm straight down at this point, because I've come to accept, that all of these systems can work as long as people all consent to them. And it won't be perfect. There'll be issues, there'll be fights and conflicts and everything, but
Yeah.
anarchy isn't a promise that people won't hoard or lie or steal or cheat or murder, but having a government is just guaranteeing that someone will.
Well, I mean, if the government is one in which a certain group of people have power and the rest of us don't, um, if people have an equal say, um, I don't know if you'd necessarily call that well. I mean,
But I mean,
what if you have?
it just gets very democratic, you know. And I vehemently oppose the democracy because I just don't like the idea that 7 people could get together and say, "Hey, we voted 7 against 3. We're going to eat you," which is what democracy is to me.
Uh-huh.
Like, hey, and that view is both ways. It's like, oh, you know, 51% of the country voted for Donald Trump. That means we have mandate to put, you know, kids in camps and sterilize them. Like, no. Yeah. That doesn't work. Or the opposite of like, oh, 52% of people voted for a Democrat, so we're going to break into your house and confiscate your firearms. Like, yeah. I'm very opposed to democracy in that sense. So I don't think that like the will of the collective is based in some kind of morality. I think I'm very much an individualist in that sense of like each person is sovereign and thus have sovereignty over themselves.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what do you think about attempts that have been made, like the Russian Revolution or whatever, to try and overthrow the oppressive systems? Like, what do they do right? Where do they go wrong? How can we fix that?
Well, definitely, I don't know if it was Lenin or Trotsky. I might mix up my Marxist scholars, but just there is an idea of like the revolution will never end. I think the biggest problem that's happened in America and why America went from like this idea that was like, okay, this is kind of new and revolutionary, this might go good, and then over 200 years turned into this awful stagnating pile of waste, is because people stopped getting involved, and then people got divided more than anything else, and people focused on petty differences more than what they had in agreement and what they had in common, and fought each other. And I even made a post today of like why I was like, I don't want to argue with people about economic theory or moral theory or like Medicare or whatever, is because if you cannot band together with your neighbor, with your common man, to fight such horrible things going on, such as the detention camps or such as the wars, if you won't do that under a capitalist system, then I have no belief that you would do the same thing if that was happening under a socialist system.
Yeah.
It's like I have to see that the people have the motivation and the heart and the unity to fight awful things no matter what the circumstances is, to where a lot of people are like, well, we can't fight what's awful until the circumstances are perfect. And I just don't think that's the right way of viewing the world, is putting the forest before the trees.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to fight every battle as it comes up. But
the Jewish partisans shouldn't rise up against the Third Reich until we get back to democracy. Well, once we have democracy, we can rise up against Hitler. Like that's not that's not how it works.
Yeah. Well, I know that one thing that you've talked about is the importance of unity across groups with different ideologies and perspectives. That we all have common interests in getting rid of these various oppressive policies and the overall oppressive system. And of course, that's one thing that Marxists talk about a lot as well. And so the contention is that the working class throughout the world has to unite and overthrow the oppressors. And the argument is that one reason why things didn't necessarily go according to plan, really the main reason in places like Russia or China or other places that have had revolutions, is that like when the Russian Revolution happened, that didn't happen anywhere else. It was just for decades it was the only revolutionary society, or eventually Stalinist society, in the world. And if you're isolated like that in this hostile capitalist world, things are really difficult. Like that, the U.S. and a whole bunch of other countries tried to invade the Soviet Union, immediately after it was founded.
They were talking about dropping one of the atomic bombs on Moscow just a couple weeks after it hit Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They were already ready to go. But MacArthur was ready to drop the bomb on Moscow at any moment. And there's a lot of conspiracies that people feel like we only nuked Japan as kind of like a, hey, Russia, don't we can do this to you. Stay in your lane. So whether that's true or not, like there's definitely kind of some of that there. Of like there was a lot of fervor around it, and people forget that Adolf Hitler was Times Person of the Year a couple years before the war, and then in that same, and if you go back to that
Henry
same
Ford's
magazine,
hero,
you will find insane amounts of like anti-communist propaganda in the same magazine that listed Adolf Hitler as Person of the fucking Year.
Yeah.
So there's definitely attempts against that, but I think when you go into like the history of that, it's so complicated and there's so many moving parts.
Yeah.
But I kind of get the spirit of your question of like if we do have a revolution or something like that, and we will immediately be beset upon by these same forces. They will flee America and then come back to America to regain what they had before, which is very similar to what happened in Russia.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like social media and the internet in general has kind of screwed that up. I don't think that could happen in the same way. Because if you zoom out, which was kind of what my speech was about, like if you drop your political bias and you drop, anything but exactly looking at what's happening, this entire year has been populist uprisings across the world. Like the Yellow Vest riots in France have been going on for like a year. Denmark, there's crazy riots going on right now. Italy, there's riots going on. Germany, there's riots going on. There's stuff happening in the UK. There's all these micro kind of revolutions and conflicts happening everywhere, and all of them are going on simultaneously. And some are on the right, some are on the left, and some have kind of iffy things. But you're seeing kind of this whole, like, instead of a single country system being shook at one time through some kind of direct revolution, you're kind of seeing this global shaking of this whole kind of lie we've been sold our whole lives about how all this is supposed to work and how all of this actually works and who's actually in charge. And your vote matters, your money matters. All you have to do is invest. But if you invest in the wrong place, then we shut the stock market down. Like all of these illusions are starting to shake loose across the planet, and I think that especially if something happens in America, it's going to continue to blow up and spread globally.
Yeah. So it sounds like you have some hope that things can turn around from this awful state that they're in.
I kind of have to, because it's either going to go. I believe it's going to happen no matter what. So the best I can do is push for and hope it being positive, instead of just the world falling into some neo dark age where like wild feudalism and Mad Max biker gangs driving around killing each other. Like, I don't want that, but and I'll work against that. But I think a lot of people that have this normalcy bias, that thinks like everything's going to be fine, that empires don't collapse, that we're in a new age, and all of human history was just a fluke, and now everything's just going to be fine, and America will be a superpower forever, and nothing will ever change. It's like, it's not how this works. What is it? The Tsar will be forever, or whatever. It was like something along those lines. It was like a common Russian phrase. How that worked out.
The end of history.
There will be a Tsar until the end of history, and then saw how that happened.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was this. I forget who said it, but initially, but there was this sense after the Soviet Union fell that capitalism is going to last forever. That's the end of history.
And I definitely think there might be some new kind of economic or philosophical system that none of us are even thought of. Mm-hmm. That somebody some new movement or some new way of organizing stuff may just appear out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I don't pretend I'm the smartest guy in the world, so maybe.
Yeah.
But I got probably 15 minutes until I gotta jump on other homie shows. So I don't know if there's anything quick you wanted to know, anything I can throw at you.
All right. Well, I'll just keep going with this stuff I thought of, I guess. So, how do we arrive at a point where we can actually possibly have a possibility of a decent society? What kinds of things do people need to do to rise up and challenge the system? What do you think?
I think just getting there was a whole thing we put on the January 17th flyers of make America neighbors again. And I really believe in that we need to start forming communities, and they need to be local and tight-knit communities whether they, and stuff like the Chaz is a great example of that.
Uh-huh.
You need to start having autonomous communities that work together, that are close, that know each other, that are cooperative, and you need to start taking that out of this system. I think this whole idea of globalizing everything and nationalizing everything to where everything is on these giant scales and everyone, everyone's involved in everyone else's business and there's all this power flying around is never going to work.
Yeah.
And you really need a lot of more small scale things going on. And even if you look at like the first American Revolution, like a lot of the history books don't cover, but one of the first actions that happened way before even the Declaration of Independence was local communities coming together and being like, hey, we're not going to follow the Crown's law anymore. We're going to do our own thing. We're not going to buy their textiles. We're going to make our own textiles. We're not going to buy their imports. We're going to grow our own crops. We're not going to buy these imported crops. And just that kind of idea of like removing your consent from the system by becoming self-reliant, whether it be through yourself or your community, and taking the power away from them. And I definitely think there needs to be a more national movement of just, again, removing your consent from this giant power structure, getting communities that are self-sufficient. And that, and it's funny when people hear me say that and they're like, oh, that's very libertarian. I'm like, actually, there's a lot of like old communist literature about doing just that, of pocket communities. That's definitely an idea I think a lot of people have had on both the libertarian and the left spectrum and everybody, and it's kind of universal. And I think if we're going to build a better society, then we need a bunch of well-functioning, personally involved people that you can drive 10 minutes away and say hi communities that are working together and working in concert inside, and then hopefully expand and make more communities outwards, and have a world of 10,000 countries instead of a couple hundred.
Yeah, and what you mentioned about withdrawing consent, it brings up a related idea. My friend Wayne Chung, who founded the animal rights group Direct Action Everywhere, talks about the example of in China there was a practice of binding women's feet forever and ever, like 1,000-year-old practice, and everybody just kind of went along with it, but at some point, a certain group of people got fed up with it and just said, not only are we not going to allow this to be done to our daughter or daughters, but we're not going to, we're not going to let our sons marry into any family where their daughters have this practice. We're just going to be very, very public and vocal and just saying no to this practice under any circumstances. Any connection we have that, we don't want to have any connection to that. And so
That's
within
perfect.
30 years, that practice ceased to exist in China.
That's perfect, and that's the exact kind of things we need to be doing. And whether it be monetarily, whether it be rent strikes or tax strikes or whatever, I keep using the phrase, and I really like it. I don't know if anyone else said it before, but I'm going to claim ownership until otherwise. It's not by any means necessary, but it is by all means available.
Yeah. You
want to attack the system by every single avenue and outlet you have, and you want to withdraw from the system in every way that you can. If you can find a way to not participate with these corporations, not give them money, to not follow what the government tells you what to do, then take every single one of those options and start doing them, no matter how big or small. Whether it be closing your Bank of America account and go join a local firm, whether it be only buy local, whether it be destroy the stock market through memes, whatever your path you find, whatever chink in the armor you can think of, not paying, landlords not paying their mortgage, rentees not paying their landlords, whatever path, everybody needs to start doing that more and more, and that's how we win this.
Yeah, well, I would add one caveat to that, though, is that there has to be mass action. It can't just be individuals doing their own individual actions. I don't like the way my boss is treating me, so I personally am not going to show up to work. That doesn't work. They'll just fire you. But if you have an organized movement where everybody engages in the same refusal, at the same time, that has more power, and particularly, obviously, the way that capitalists or corporations or whatever you want to call them get their wealth is by exploiting us workers. The most powerful action we can take, arguably, is when we collectively withhold our labor.
True, and definitely, it's preferable to have collective action. But one of my favorite images ever, and I've had this on my computer since I was like 14 years old, is a single man running down a hill and jumping into a giant line of cops and blowing their riot shields aside. He's just like caved in, and the text around it literally just says like, the odds don't matter anymore, fight. And that's how I feel of like, if you can get it to where you have collective action, then you need to, and you need to start organizing that, and that you should follow that. But at some point, like, you just have to, even as an individual, be like, well, I'm not going on with it anymore. Because that's the argument that the police make of like, oh, well, me saying that I'm not going to bust people for drugs anymore, I'm just one guy, it doesn't matter. But now you're having cops that are like, screw it, fire me, I'm not going to do it. I'll go find another job, and I'll go public with it, and people will start GoFundMes for these police officers that are told to, break up some black family or, enforce some ridiculous law, and they tell the department to go blow them, and then those people make the community comes together once that's public and supports them. We need more of that. We need more, I guess martyr isn't the right word, because I obviously don't want anyone dying at the hands of the state. But in a sense, like martyr of like, hey, this is my neck, and I'm putting it on the line, and I'm going to do this anymore, and I don't care if nobody follows. I'm going alone.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for that too. That not everybody's willing to, risk their life or livelihood or otherwise stick their neck out. And so, just as important as collective action is for a few bold souls to be willing to like risk everything.
There's so many things in our country that like everyone wants to do, but everybody's just afraid to be the first person to do it.
Yeah,
and it's like, so eventually you just have to have I don't know if you're a Lord of the Rings fan or anything, but you need the Merry and Pippin charging out in front of the line alone, just saying to hell with it, kind of get everybody to be like, oh, we can do this. And the Wall Street Bets is a perfect thing to do that. That was like one guy a year ago that's like, no, you're all wrong. I'm going to do this. And now a year later, just hedge funds are on the phone crying and screaming as they're losing billions and billions of dollars, and the government's panicking, and all of these people are just in this giant horde destroying Wall Street. It's like, because a few people in the beginning were like, I don't care, I'm going to lose all this money if I have to. Let's get these bastards.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, a lot of movements start like that. Like the anti-slavery movement was pretty small at first. Most of the people at the time were just sort of accommodationist. Well, let's go back to Africa, or let's try to reform slavery and so forth. And
a lot of the hardcore original abolitionists did not have very pleasant lives for being abolitionists.
Yeah. They started out sticking out like a sore thumb, but then things just grew and expanded. And same with the Vietnam War movement. And I remember back in, 2001, when 9/11 happened, and everybody's like, oh, let's go blow up Afghanistan. And there was probably
very few people like Ron Paul and even Bernie Sanders and a couple people that were like, no, and they got
Bernie Sanders actually voted for that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I might have
only Barbara Lee.
I know there was like a very small handful of people that were like I think they had some derogatory name of the gang of something or something like that.
Yeah, the Saddam lovers or whatever.
Yeah, and they got catastrophized for it. But that's what you gotta do. But
that's Iraq, not Afghanistan. But there were like a few hundred of us at a protest in D.C. against the impending Afghanistan war. And there were like 1,000 riot cops there that at one point surrounded us.
Whenever that happens, you're doing something right. That was the best part about Lansing, is the fact that there was literally like 7, maybe we have like 8 Boogaloo Boys, and there was National Guard and snipers and Black Hawk helicopters for us. And it's like, okay, I think we're doing something right.
Yeah.
Whenever you're dramatically outnumbered by the police, you're probably in the right. Personal opinion. But yeah, homie wants me on in like I think like 5 minutes, 6 minutes or something. So I'm gonna drop out here. I appreciate talking to you.
Yeah, it was great having you on, Magnus, and hopefully, as you do more of these interviews, some of those myths will be dispelled. So where can people find you or dox you or whatever?
Right. Yeah. So it's at Magnus Panvidya, just Magnus, and then Panvidya, and then we have in the works a kind of cooperative podcast between members of BLM, Antifa, and Boogaloo that we're going to be calling the United Voluntary Action Coalition kind of thing. We're still hammering out details, but that should be coming really shortly, and I will be announcing that when I can. And then obviously next week, going on Alex Jones with an Antifa member, which that's going to be very interesting. So, yeah, I appreciate you, and thanks for having me on, and I'll talk to you, as soon as possible again.
All right. Yeah, thanks for coming on, Magnus. We'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Stay safe, stay free.